Hello, everyone. Welcome to I'm Alive, a ceremonial and transformational summit to encourage you to liberate your essence, celebrate your life with every heartbeat, every breath that you take. And my name is Mar Guerrero. I'm the founder of Alchemy, a space to remember, transform, and create. And I'm here and I have the honor to have my dear teacher, Daniel Giamario, who is the creator of Shamanic Astrology, Mystery School, and he has been researching into life philosophy and the sense of what it means to be human for many, many years. And for me, it has been the one paradigm that gave me meaning to my conflicts and contradictions in myself. So I'm very grateful for that. And it's a total honor to have you here, Daniel. So welcome.
Wonderful that you invited me, that we can have this conversation here at this time and to support your vision here with this great group of folks you have assembled for the summit. So yeah, I've been involved in this since 1969, actually. And I was actually part of the astrology world in the early 70s when there was quite a renaissance of astrology at that point. And my teacher was Dane Ridjar, and at that time period, the whole movement in astrology was away from predictive, and the emphasis was on seeing that astrology can give you clues, like a set of instructions to know your life purpose. Okay, and it was a mixture of things at that point of depth psychology. There's a lot of Jungian in it. There was a connection to different spiritual organizations, particularly Sri Aurobindo and actually Baha'i were some of the inspirations for it, and some theosophy. And then in the 70s, it became connected with a lot of mythic kinds of things, mythic systems from around the world. And that was also, interestingly, during the time period when there was a great deal of criticism of the way that the culture at that time period perceived men and women. You know, so there was this explosion of a view that we need to expand the possibilities of the masculine and the feminine, and to get beyond what like the latter stage patriarchy would say men are supposed to be and what women are supposed to be. So even back in the 70s, so it was way before the use of the expression shamanic astrology and even the school happening. I was involved in this work of expanding the full spectrum of how we can have all these different authentic expressions of the masculine and the feminine. And while you have to sort of create some form of sacred geometry on it, I mean, as far as how you could figure out what are the authentic expressions, you know, so in this type of astrology, we did it around 12 and 12. So like 12 authentic expressions of the masculine and 12 authentic expressions of the feminine. So 24 different archetypal expressions. And we, in our system, see it through Venus and Mars. And then over a period of time, as this whole thing evolved, and notice, Mara, you know this very clearly, that we don't focus it on sun signs. You know, so while the sun sign can be so generalized, and it actually can box people in the way the ordinary world kind of thinks of those sun signs that are very often their shadow. We placed the emphasis on Venus and Mars as being the authentic expressions that we're investigating. Kind of like, okay, here's what you're here to learn about, right? So, and then as this evolved, it became what is known as the inner sacred marriage process, where, so basically, while it can be applied beautifully to making our relationships better, it also, though, from a spiritual / psychological perspective, became an approach to how to gain inner wholeness. You know, so we're actually joining together, as it were, Venus and Mars internally. You know, so without it being completely biological. In other words, every woman would have this projected image, every man would have this projected image, and it's through that projected image that we can bring it in to create wholeness. So it's actually beyond, well, why are we attracted to the types we're most attracted to? So it is something that certainly helps our relational life, but it also allows us to develop a wholeness that whether we're in relationship or not. I mean, some people didn't even contract to have a life that would be about marriage or family or, even, I mean, some people are renunciates even today. They're not going to be defined through a wife, a husband, a partner, and so on. There's so many different ways that can be expressed. So we're into the freedom of the authentic expression of who we are as a human being, and we very much support the idea of organic human beings, like not like becoming, part AI or, human 2.0 or something like that. I mean, we're very wanting to be very much connected to land and sky. And so that's why it's called shamanic astrology also, because it's like, it's valuing our journey from spirit into matter to be fully human, so with the vulnerability and with the connection to our the different phases of initiation we go through as we go through our lifetimes, right? So there's a lot to the whole paradigm, as you're one of those that have been foundationally certified in this system, so you absolutely know what I'm talking about. But I think you wanted me to focus in on how we can become more authentically who we intended to be in the current life, because actually our view here is that happiness, a feeling of being alive, that we're really on track with why we're here, is not always the path of least resistance. Sometimes just simply to know the one we came in to explore can be so freeing, and then to know something about it. Right.
I love that so much, because there is so in the spirituality, right? Like when you are in the right path, everything flows, and if not, you are not. And then it doesn't have to be that way, right? And the chart also explains to you, like if you have a strong Saturn or anything like that, it will explain why it wasn't that easy. And then it's very freeing at the same time. So I'm talking about the masculine and the feminine, the Venus and the Mars.
Right.
For the summit is perfect because we have a lot of feminine energy, but
Right.
we also very much, and in many conversations, it came up how for men within their feminine and masculine, it's also very hard to be vulnerable.
Right.
And there is also a lot of healing for the feminine within men that is very important.
Right.
Because if not, we are not balanced in society. We cannot have more women awakened and women, and then where are the men, right? And then for conscious relationships as well. So how does Mars and Venus work in a personal chart?
Well, I'll use an example here about I guess we could say how we got to both the challenges and the opportunities now. In our system, there's this major initiation that happens around age 15. All right. So there's a Mars return that happens at 15. There's a Venus return that happens at 16. And if we go back to ancient times, there would be major rites of passage that would happen at that time. There would be puberty rites, as it were. A person would be coming into their manhood, or in many cultures, as a girl would start having her period, and they might put her into a pool. Now it's time to start being a mother. There's still some parts of the world where even at 14 or 15, it's less known that in the United States and some of the southern states, the age of consent was 14 until just recently. So there's different ways this was looked at throughout history. But in what you're asking me about here, we're talking about men for now. Okay, yes. So there's 12 authentic expressions of the masculine. In certain cultures, warrior cultures, they might send all the boys out to the jungle at age 15, and you can't come back unless you bring back a lion. And so that would result in all warriors. And if you essentially don't come back, then you're vanished or you're dead, right? So that was a way to make sure that all of them are like one archetype, right? But in our view right now, let's say if a boy had Mars in Cancer, maybe a rite of passage would be to have him take care of the garden or to give him a horse, and he has to provide nourishment to the horse. You know, so therefore it's a version of masculinity that is about providing nourishment. And that could be perceived in modern times as the man who might end up being a single father because he is actually providing more nourishment in the family, depending on what archetype the woman is. You know, the woman might be like a corporate executive or something, you know, and she's demonstrating a whole different version of the masculine, of the feminine. Which is more like we might imagine a more like a masculine version, right? So we're expanding this so that if somebody had Mars in Cancer, let me describe it this way. On a man's chart, Mars is where he would want to be valued. On a woman's chart, Venus is where she would want to be valued. So, I mean, if a woman had Venus in Cancer, she'd want to be valued for providing nourishment, you know, to be a mother. I mean, biologically, all women could conceivably have it built into them that they can be a mother, but not all women are mothers, okay? You know, so there's so many different expressions that can be valued. And in some of the masculine positions for men are closer to how we could conceive of being feminine, you know, archetypally feminine. So like Mars in Pisces or Mars in Cancer, you know, even Mars in Libra. I mean, if a man has Mars in Libra, he wants to be valued for his capacity to be a good partner. Okay, and which then becomes complementary to a woman with Venus in Libra who is here to investigate how to be a partner. But that doesn't mean the old version of wife, which is very much a hierarchical role, you know, where the wife serves the husband or something like that. So the goal here, we're also evolving these understandings, you know, so Libra is about conscious equal partnering, while Cancer is about providing nourishment. Pisces is about genuinely caring about other people, you know, and being a healer. And tuning in to where the needs of others are. That is radically different than, let's say, Mars and Scorpio, which is about going to the edge of aliveness, finding out where the turn on is, you know, like to risk feeling everything you can feel for yourself, you know. So each of them is like a different expression. And so if we know our partner's Venus or Mars, you know, a man knowing a woman's Venus, or a man knowing, it's, by the way, this works even with same-sex relationship, you know, so it really doesn't even matter what the biological identity is of who we're with, right? So, but we're still projecting the archetype. So yeah, two women together, if one of them is projecting something nurturing, right, and the partner is a provider of nourishment, then it really works beautifully. So each of them has their own expression. One of the ways that I like to imagine this, and this is an incredibly important point, there is in our system archetypal masculine and archetypal feminine. This is not to be confused with whether you're a man or a woman. So if you're completely archetypal masculine, then that's like the way that in most systems we'll think of as yang, you know, like in the yin yang kind of thing. Pure archetypal masculine is way over at one end of the spectrum, and pure archetypal feminine, pure yin, okay, way on the other side. But there are some expressions of the biological feminine that are closer to the masculine side. There are some versions of biological masculine that are way over close to the feminine side. So it's like a gradient. So that's why you have to see it as not all men are the same or all women are the same, which is what it is they were trying to make it look like through the 50s and 60s, which is why there was this movement in astrology in the 70s, which we are now taking it further, about how to see you could have different numbers if you want, but at least in this type of astrology, there's 24 different expressions. 24 different expressions of men and women, archetypally. These are the different expressions. Like I'm a Mars and Scorpio, so I want to be valued for Mars and Scorpio, right? But then I have also Venus in Virgo. So the version of the feminine that I've always loved is the discriminating, inscrutable, pattern weaving. It could be described as being critical, they don't miss anything, and so that's the kind of feminine I love, right? And now, but different men and women are going to have different projected images, But how the sacred marriage works, let us say that you have the way your life has been set up, that you do not have an easy time finding a good partner, or you keep choosing the same kind over and over again, and it does not reach your relationship intent. We don't consider that to be bad karma. We don't consider that to be because you were deficient, or that you need to work on yourself more, per se. It's always good to work on yourself. But rather, I think it's a set of instructions where you can then form a relationship with that projected image internally. And then you have inner wholeness. So I discovered at a certain point in my life that it was foolish to try to find Virgo on the outside through a woman. Okay. No woman can be that. So what I discovered for me, this is just me personally now. I mean, everybody is going to have their own story. I discovered that my relationship with the sacred feminine was through Gaia herself. As a matter of fact, it was my connection to sacred sites, to landscape, to the patterning of the sky, to the rock formations and things like that, which is where I had my relationship with the sacred feminine. And she was with me always. In fact, the system of astrology that I teach all comes from her. And not from any individual woman, but from her directly, the Virgo expression of the feminine. But that's not going to be every man's experience. That was mine, and it took me later in life to realize that was the case. So each case is going to be different.
And because in my case, it's an interesting factor when both are in the same sign. Mm-hmm. Because it has taken me a while to see the difference, and I'm still working on it. I have Venus and Mars in Aries.
Yes.
And then what happens then? Because it's the same energy, but the masculine and the feminine, what is the feminine Aries and what is the masculine Aries? So if that happens to any other person, how would you say that is the marriage?
Well, I mean, on one hand, if you have them both in the same sign, there is no ambiguity. That's something that must become you. But in the early stages, the projected image of Aries, okay, so if that means looking for a person who has this absolute black and white, more of a, quote, masculine strength. I choose you. I know what I want. I'm black and white. I'm all in. In fact, maybe this would not necessarily be you, Mara, but I've worked with huge numbers of women who don't have Venus in Aries, okay, but they only have Mars in Aries, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be the type of person. It could be the other way around too. It could be a guy with Venus in Aries, right? So basically, they're looking for someone who makes the decisions. Like back in the 60s and 70s, I would know women who had Mars in Aries, and they would just love being with a guy that they make all the decisions. We're going to this movie, we're listening to this music, and there's a certain kind of nobility to that too. It's the kind of imagery of the masculine that opens the door for you, or takes care of you, and so on. And that can actually, some women like that, right? But if you have Venus in Aries and Mars in Aries, you're not going to want to be with somebody who does all that, right? I mean, it's great that they could have enough clarity about what their mission and purpose is, but ultimately it's about you knowing what yours is. So then that becomes the Aries version of the feminine, which is what we call Amazonian. Using the Jungian word that was used, the word Amazon was used by Tony Wolff, who was Jung's, he called her his other wife, right? And a great deal of his work inspiration came from her. And so she said there's certain versions of the feminine that she used the word Amazon, and it meant a woman whose identity is based upon her accomplishments, her achievements, and her freedom. So that could be a commitment to a relationship, absolutely. But in most cases, in more recent times, it's a woman who can be extremely capable of running an organization, or has her own mission and purpose statement. She knows why she's born, because she is a creator through her own actions. So therefore, it would look like more Yang, more archetypally masculine. She can run her own life. She doesn't need the external strong Aries type to hold it together for her. And in your case, I know you have a Capricorn moon too. So, basically that combo is quite Amazonian. You're in command of your own life. Now, that could be more, it's perfectly fine to be with a partner that has those characteristics also. You can enjoy the Aries qualities, but you're not in the shade of it. If you follow, that's the way I use that expression when a person, a man or a woman, is on a journey to gaining inner wholeness, to not be in the shade of it, that you don't need it from the outside. If you have it internally, well, then you can, if you want, be with somebody who has those characteristics. In fact, it can be quite enjoyable, but you're not addicted to it or over-identified with it. You've gained your own wholeness. So that, but now, Mar, the example I'm giving is specifically for Aries, right? So if there could be a man, let's say, who has Mars and Venus both in Cancer, well, the projection is, my mother did everything for me. I'm looking for a woman who will provide that nourishment, right?
Yes.
But the sacred marriage there is where he might be really strongly connected to the feminine, right? But he needs to provide the nourishment for himself, and not expect the woman to be like mom, right? Or if there happen to be challenging aspects to the Venus or Mars, right? And it's Cancer, we're talking about Cancer right now, then often what will happen there is one of two extremes. You either are used to perfect nourishment from mother, and then so therefore no woman could ever, match dear old mom. Or it could also be the other version, you never had it at all. So therefore there's this longing for the nourishment that you didn't have. That's what the challenging aspects. But in both cases, you have to do it yourself. You're not angry because the person you're with doesn't do it well enough, or that there's no one out there who can, so you have to eventually have to provide that nourishment for yourself. So that's a completely different image than Aries, but it's both of them together is like a set of instructions without any ambiguity. You see, if they're different, then it requires a bit more alchemy. Like in my own case, I'll just again use myself as an example. And this is also part of the more advanced understanding of the sacred marriage work. I have Aries on the descendant, Libra rising, Aries on the descendant. Then I have Venus in Virgo. So what in the world is that? That means so the way I would, until I just develop the capacity to have some sense of the sacred marriage, I would be with women who half the time were Aries and half the time were Virgo. So they would have a strength and an independence, but they also had that very sort of almost non-relational aspect of Virgo, so they'd be gone. They would be really strong and powerful and fun, and then they would be gone. Then they would be totally in a Virgo in their own inner world. And to get comfortable with that was something which forced me to do the sacred marriage, because it was never a fulfillment when you looked at it externally. And then once that wholeness happened, wow, I love women that are strong enough, Aries, but also have that critical, discriminating, inscrutable side of themselves, So you can have that in your life, but you got to have to do it inside first, in order to have that. My journey was more challenging. I mean, some people out there, what is he talking about? I easily found the partner I wanted to be with, right? But it's really weird is that sometimes if you have it too easy and you easily are able to get your soulmate at an early age or something, you have less motivation to do inner wholeness. So that's why we don't in our system ever look at any of it as bad aspects or good aspects. There's never anything like born under a bad sign. We eliminated a long time ago this sort of Christianized version of karma. If you're having a difficult experience finding a partner, it isn't because you're deficient. It isn't because of bad karma. It's because you have a set of instructions to get you to wholeness.
Yes. And I feel that in a way, with the pandemic and the crisis, like some of the people who were having it easier to find a partner, right, after being together, like now there are a lot of like divorces and relationships getting broken up because it wasn't really a whole experience of, right, I am whole, you are whole, and we decide to be together. It was more, right, like, okay, I look for you to complete me. And there is, right, so much language in the society, in songs and everything, that is like, can we just reframe this because nobody completes you, right?
Right. So, it's like in my parents' generation, and I go back. I mean, I just turned 73, so I know what it was like in the 60s. And so the average thing there was like, meet my other half, or meet my better half, or something like that, which is just buying into a particular view that was from the culture. So it's true, we have to really reframe this. In fact, I'll give you a good example. We have a statement in our school where if people go through a divorce, let's say, the way we now articulate that is, well, so tell me, when did you complete your marriage? Mm. So it's not like a failure. Mm. It's like, I understand you bringing up about the challenges because of lockdowns and pandemic and everything like that. But there's other examples I can give that comes up a lot, where two people get together, and this is a very common thing that happens in my counseling. Two people get together, they have 3 or 4 years together, before they had kids. Then they have the family experience, so they've raised a couple of kids, and then they get to a place of empty nest. The kids are gone, and then they have to, why are we together now? And then in some cases, they could go back to how they were with each other before they became parents to see if they can rediscover that. But then there's also cases where they realize the only reason they were together was to raise the family, right? And so now that that's over, they realize, I need to be with someone else now, because the main reason we were together was to raise the kids, right? So there's all of these different things that can happen in different stages of life. It's just that it seems that, you know, these examples come up all the time. Two people that had separate lives and they were married, and then now they have to be in the same house hour after hour after hour after hour, you know, so they can't go to their jobs, they're working online. Wow, this is different. I didn't know what it was like to be with this guy for, you know, 24 hours a day. I was used to having my own space because he was gone all day. You know, it's not just about men. This could be the other way around. You could have the guy who's at home and then she's been out at the office here or whatever, you know. But so now they're having to rediscover why they're together. And this can be definitely something which promotes the inner sacred marriage work. Because remember here, whenever we're talking about this subject, relationship, knowing for sure what version of the masculine or feminine you are, what is your authentic archetype, beyond what the culture says men and women are supposed to be. But it's this very interesting interweaving between, do we do this so we can get a great relationship? Do we do this in order to make our relationship better? Sure, but it's also equally a way of gaining the inner wholeness, which is a spiritual practice that is actually, in my view, particularly here at the turning of the ages, at the end and the beginning of a great cycle of time, we all here are to do that, to gain inner wholeness, whether we make it work in a relationship or not.
And that make us feel alive, right? Because it's like, it's your life purpose with a person. It's not just like trying to find like tools to fix you, like there is something wrong with you, and then you keep trying to find other people to fix these things instead of just like look inside. And now with this great awakening, like so many people are like, it's a very good moment, I feel, to do this kind of work. And I also would like to say, because I'm part of the school, that one of the things that I love about how the inner sacred marriage work, and for me it's an ongoing process, of course, and I'm sure I will take the course again, is that when we took the course, it's not just mental. It's not only about talking about the archetypes. There is a ceremony,
right?
And that was so powerful for me. And I know I will do it again as soon as we can also do it in person.
Well, one of the exercises we would do near the end of that training was to create like a vision board. And it's like we would put out on the floor like hundreds of magazines, right? And people would have this whole exercise of getting imagery that would be for their sacred marriage process. They would use the imagery of their descendant or their Venus or Mars. This was so powerful in my own life, because before I met my wife, the Lynn, who I'm with now, I did this vision board, and there was not one image in it that was a person. I was putting images for Virgo and Aries. So I had big cats for Aries, you know, like leopards and lions and stuff. And I had for Virgos star patterns, rock formations, a landscape, you know, that it was, and that was the whole vision board. And it was soon after that she showed up in my life, actually. So I mean, so it's you're right. I mean, I'm only using this as an example, but it's not some intellectual thing. In fact, we would do things of like, you write a poem or a letter to your beloved, right? Or you do like what we did. I think you were involved in the process there in Bali, right? So where the ceremony of like invoking the imagery
The both in our languages, that it was very beautiful, because each one of us, we were all women, and then the teachers, and then everyone was in a different language. And for me, what was very interesting, and this is why I feel that it's like an ongoing process, is that And I would like you to talk about the moon in this process, because what I felt in that ceremony is that before going to my Mars, I needed to embrace fully my moon.
Right.
And in the chart, they are connected. And so the whole energy, like I was wearing a brown dress, it was much more like awakening the wise woman in me. And then later the
Right.
Mars and the Aries. So this is like sometimes like there are pieces that they need to be together. So
Well, sure. Like
hold the moon.
in fact, this might be a good point for me just to share about how the moon position in this form of astrology is different than how a lot of people see it. Um, uh, we look at the moon as a person's lineage. It's like who you used to be. So it's not like the female side. I mean, it would certainly not be that way if it was an Aquarius moon or something like that. All right. So the entirety, there's gods and goddesses in all in the moon. All right. So it's not just the woman. So it's an entirety of a person's lineage. So in your case, and it's the same way as me, Capricorn moon, so that is an elder lineage. And if you're born female with a Capricorn moon, well, then your foundation is elder wise woman, the grandmother who happens to be on the circle and council of elders. And that's what you would come in with. But as we move forward to the current life purpose themes, it cannot be that that's the only thing you are. It's a foundational piece to get us to our life purpose themes. So our view has always been that in a place of wholeness, we would be our moon about 1/3 of the time in support of current life purpose themes. Now, sometimes a person does not even have a connection to their moon. So they'll need to have a soul return or a soul retrieval on it. But it's more often, though, we're over-identified with it. And so it doesn't allow us to get to the new territory. I mean, every chart is going to be different on that. I mean, if a person had Capricorn moon, Capricorn rising, and then they're similar, but or Capricorn moon and Venus in Capricorn or something like that. But that's usually letting go of it whilst embracing it, but not over-identified with it. So in your case, I think you were experiencing the foundational strength of the Capricorn moon, the knowing that you had been a wise elder woman. I mean, our view of Capricorn is that it's not patriarchal. It is a feminine sign, but it's the elder expression of the feminine. As an old friend of mine once said, grandmother goat.
Yeah, and in a way, this is why like, sometimes there is this need of soul retrieval, because I never identified with the corporate vision of Capricorn. So that is not the Capricorn that I was born to be,
No.
a moon. So I needed to embrace like the real, authentic version of the Capricorn that I am to really go towards the Aries. And I feel that that is happening, especially with archetypes that are less appropriate, or like they are not included in society, like a Scorpio. And for instance,
exactly.
the summit is done with a lot of Scorpio energy in November, that it is going to be a squaring. So it's in a very Scorpionic time. And I would like you to talk about that, because every time I read a chart and the person has a Scorpio, is normally where I spend more time, because I always feel that it's very difficult to embrace 100% in this.
Sure. Yeah. Actually, every time I work with someone, particularly, I'll just speak of women right now who have either Scorpio moon or Venus in Scorpio or Scorpio rising. What I always say is that to really understand this one, you have to go back before patriarchy, because in matrilineal societies, the Scorpio expression of the feminine was the active principle. It was the strongest of all the archetypes. And she was known as Shakti or Durga or Kali, or even in the Inanna story, it's the Ereshkigal. I mean, we even see Pluto as being feminine energy. It's not one of the three brothers that the Greeks allocated. So, okay, you'll take the underworld, the three brothers take it over. No, the original Plutonian figure is an underworld expression of the feminine. So Scorpio, though, and here's the other factor. Scorpio is an active force. So in those cultures, it was not like some just receptive, loving, nurturing version of the feminine. It was the strength of the feminine. And in those cultures, it wasn't that Shiva was some wimp, but he knew who had the power, and he would rise up to meet her. So they made a really, really good team. But in this expressed area, this is very different than. So I have this view that most of the descriptions of sun signs are their shadow. So a lot of times Scorpio is seen as repressed, or secretive, or but that's only a survival strategy. Because what happened to Scorpio in patriarchy is that, how many millions were burned at the stake, or that if a woman was just able to connect with women's mysteries, this was dangerous. So it had to be kept under. This is all now coming back into strength. I mean, even Freudian psychology hated Scorpio because it wanted to strengthen the superego. It was afraid that if there was too much of this id energy or too much of this Scorpio energy, okay, that it would be descending into the jungle. That it would be just too crazy. When in fact, it was the lack of appreciation for Scorpio that is one of the main reasons for the challenges we're in. That the inability for people to be vulnerable or to feel their feelings or to legitimately feel where their rage or outrage is about circumstances. I mean, I like to think of Jesus himself as being scorpionic. He was the one who threw out the money changers. I mean, that's there's a certain that's also like a Scorpio kind of thing. And I would go so far to say that I think that one of the main reasons for patriarchal overthrow of the feminine mysteries was the men's fear of this power and strength of the feminine. And so therefore Scorpio was then forced to go underground. But it's coming out now. So we value the Shakti expression very much, and that would be the Scorpionic version. This applies for men too, of course, but I think it's women that have been most violated by the views about Scorpio.
Yes, and this is what is why the summit is in this moment that the Scorpio is also like the season of death and transformation. But I always love that you say that there is so much life in it, like that Shakti energy, and that it doesn't matter if a person doesn't have a placement in a Scorpio. In the moment of releasing these videos, that's the energy of the collective, because the planets will be there. So.
Well, it's the Scorpionic version of the feminine that's speaking out, that it's coming alive. If you remember our very short form definition of Scorpio, the mystery school Scorpio, not just sun sign, but moon, Venus, rising, and so on, is having the courage to go to the edge of aliveness for its own sake. Where is the aliveness? Where is the turn on? And if you don't know, then there might not be anything for you there. If you don't feel it, it's visceral. You go for in fact, the other thing, Mar, is that we always said that and this is not going to be true for every sign. Scorpio and Taurus, these two, desire is the engine of creation. So it's not an unwillingness to feel desire. The problem with desire is attachment to desire, not desire itself. So Scorpio is about developing that passion for life.
Yes. And all of this is is going to be very emphasized next year, right? With the change for the nodal axis to Scorpio and Taurus. So
right, that's true. The nodal axis for about a year and a half will be Taurus Scorpio again. Yes, that's right. North node going into Taurus, south node into Scorpio. And then we also then have a movement into a different archetype for feminine also. It's actually going to move into, well, it started out as Capricorn and now it's Aquarius, right? So, but it's a new Venus cycle that's going to be happening. And right now, during the time of this summit, is Mars is in the underworld. The Aries expression of the masculine is in the underworld now, going through its journey of surrender and vulnerability and grieving. In fact, I'd like to say at this point that what's happening to the masculine on the planet is the masculine version, and this is not just for men, but it's, you know, for the masculine and women too, all right? It's similar to what happened 6,000 years ago with the journey of Inanna into the underworld. When Inanna went into the underworld 6,000 years ago, it was to grieve the end of the age of Taurus. It was to grieve the end of the matrilineal time frame. That's why she went. She went to the funeral of the great bull of heaven. And that was the surrender, to grieve. That was a lot to grieve. Would it not be? I mean, a whole matrilineal age, you grieve. Well, now the Aries archetype of the masculine is in the underworld. And that's like, in a sense, is grieving the certain identification with a version of Aries that is no longer useful. Obviously what I'm speaking of is that the patriarchal side of Aries, professional armies, winning at all costs. You know, it's just like, and this is actually going, it's now in a place of surrender. This is like the Sundance for Aries right now. And that would also apply to women who have unwittingly been allies of the patriarchy. And there's so many different books on this, you know, the learning about the inner patriarch. There's some women that have the connection to Aries. That's one of their journeys too. You know, it's like, how have I been supportive of this? You know, unwittingly. Women who've benefited by being with patriarchal men, or, you know, or been supportive of the institutions of patriarchy that they got benefits from, but which was really a sellout of the authenticity of the feminine. Mm-hmm. That's now. What are the dates of your? What is the end point of the summit?
4th to the 10th of November.
Yeah. So that's actually that's at the point where Mars is moving into Scorpio, right? And so yes. Every time,
Scorpio, yes, squaring Saturn, I think the last day.
It's what's really weird. If you saw my article about this, that every time there has been the Aries archetype for the masculine journey, it's always at the same season, and it always comes out of the underworld in the sign of Scorpio. It happened in 1942. It happened in 1989. It happened in 1910, and now again this year. You know, so it's like, this is, what is Mars and Scorpio going to do? Did it do its journey of surrender? Did it do its Sundance? Did it do its grieving? Or is it going to come out angry? This is what we are working with in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, about helping Mars in its surrender, you know, to let go of what it thought Aries was supposed to be, so it could really serve the needs of to have nobility again, to have ability to be a defender of what their mission and purpose statement is. You know, whether it's their family, whether it's their culture, whether it's the cosmic order, whether it's to be a defender of the earth herself.
And that's why, like, is seriously, like, the intention of choosing this day to put out there some energy that is inspiring and encouraging, and like connect with that power that every human being has to change things and to be part of creating different structures that are life supporting and not the opposite. And the same, so like everything we learned previously in whatever job we did, we can put it towards a sacred work for the earth. And
Right.
every person is going to do it in a different way because
Right.
they're all from different mysteries. And
It's
it's why
important to
astrology
know.
is amazing.
It's important to know your place on the wheel, as quickly as possible. I mean, it's all like at a time period of like coming into a singularity, coming into to a simultaneous experience of past, present, and future. I mean, so it's coming together into this time period now where we have no choice but to be who we really are. And it is our view in this system that while it may not be the path of least resistance, that if we do align with that original set of instructions, with our life purpose themes, that it just feels better. I mean, the universe is supportive of human beings that are awake. It always reminds me of this, what I was told once, that why do we do ceremony? I learned this from one of my shamanic teachers. He said, we do ceremony because the spirits like it. So the idea here is that great mystery actually loves it if awake human beings are connected to great mystery. So there's a reciprocity that happens. This is why this kind of astrology is not deterministic. It's not that's the main reason why a lot of intelligent people don't like astrology, because they think it's about being under the control or power of outer forces. Not at all. It's just a way of having that communication with great mystery, to know our place on the wheel. And astrology is one of the many systems. It's not the only one, but it's the one I love the most. I think that gives us clues. It's like we have a set of instructions, but to follow those instructions, you kind of have to be beyond cultural relativity. Because the consensus reality would say all men are a certain way, all women are a certain way. Ridiculous. I mean, it's like we got to get rid of that view. There are many, many different possible and authentic expressions of your place on the wheel. And to be there makes life just more alive, but more fulfilling, more depending, if your job is to be more passionate, well, then be more passionate. If it's to be more loving, different essence, different essential qualities will show up in different people. We're not all the same. We all are, first and foremost, human. We're all human beings. And so there's no battle between men and women. We're all first and foremost humans here. And maybe one more thing to say on this, Mara, and it's really foundational to our school. For the far greater history of our species, we have been collaborative. We have been allies, men and women. It's only recently that it's gotten weird, right? So for a much longer period, maybe 300,000 years, we've been collaborative, and only maybe in the last 5,000 or 6,000 years has it gone astray, which is why we're at a turning point. While this is the turning of the ages, we create something new.
So thank you so much. I think that is a great way to finish. And then I encourage everyone to study with the school, because for me has been really life changing, and there will be a lot of things happening for sure in the school. So the links will be below, and anything that you would like to say to finish, or for people who want to know more about shamanic astrology, to go
Just
deeper.
go to the website, get the newsletter. We put out a newsletter twice a month. Once a month, I do a vlogcast. One came out a few days ago. We also have a Facebook page where I post to once a week. Other people post to it. A lot of new developments that you'll hear about, and definitely Mara, she get some sessions, get a reading from Mara, right? She knows this stuff really well, right? I can't think of anything else at the moment. The book, the Shamanic Astrology Handbook. There's a card deck. We have a card deck that shows very nicely the 24 different expressions of the masculine and feminine, you know, in a larger card deck. We had 64 cards in the card deck, including wild cards, and it's I think you have that. So a pleasure sharing this with you, Mara.
Yes, yeah, total pleasure. And in these times, I think it's a perfect. I love it. I love it. And with your Mars in Scorpius, just is perfect to have this energy here. So then to inspire that, going to the depth of who we are, in order, right? Like not to see just the scratching the surface, but
Right.
going deep into the essence of who we are. Because I think at this point there is no way around it.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, if not now, when? I mean, this is the singularity of it all coming together right now. You know, so it's kind of like that great Aquarius statement. We haven't. I mean, we can give great statements to all of them, but the great Aquarian statement is,
There is no shadow.
be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Oh, I love that one. I haven't heard. Yes, 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 yes. So it's the time, right? And that's the only way to feel alive. So thank you so much for everything that in my personal life you have bring, and all the wisdom, and also like how to share this with others. And thank you everyone for watching us and for being here, for being alive, and for being humans. So we don't forget that. Right? We are not robots. There is a lot of conversations about not like the mechanical time that doesn't work with us, and we are not robots. So let's keep being humans, right? So that's the
Absolutely.
yes.
We're on the same team. Thanks, Mark.
Yes.